So why do they want the defense to lead in the way that they want? We heard from Brigadier Kininda that they got information about Constable Zungu's presence at the hostel through GWABINI. So he says there was no koloko there. There was no koloko. The whole Jameson story, Zungu tried to make himself like, we rich boy, Pussy Jameson. No, that was the word of the week. Una manga. Tell me why the state has never told us that GWABINI was once a suspect in the Senzo Meyiwa case. Mess.
And I'm bad like the Barbie. I'm a doll, but I still wanna party. Pink felt like I'm ready to bend. I'm a 10, so I pull a next 10. Like Jazzy, Stacy, all of the Barbies is pretty. Damn, all of the Barbies is bad.
Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Noba Zindombela, also known as GWABINI on all social media platforms. Do subscribe, be a part of this family, and if you are a returning Sabi, welcome back, darling. Now, as you know, every week I bring you proceedings in the Senzo Meyiwa trial, and I'm here to do exactly that. Before I get into this video, guys, please do like this video, because the more you like the video, the more YouTube recommends the video to other users so that my video can be watched by other people, and this means that more people actually get to know what is happening in the Senzo Meyiwa trial. And also do comment with your thoughts on the proceedings for the week, and please do not skip the ads, guys. Do not skip the ads on this video, because that is how I make my money on YouTube. If you feel good and you'd like to do something else for me to get money on this channel, you can use the thanks button here at the bottom next to the like button, and then you can gift the channel. That's the only way you can get away with skipping the ads. Otherwise, my ads. So without wasting too much of your time, guys, let us get into this video. Now, from the proceedings of last week, we were expecting a certain Miss XX to come and testify before this court, and I had taken my guesses as to who this Miss XX would be, but to my surprise, the next witness was GWABINI Zungu himself. So guys, the defense did call on their next witness, and they did say that their next witness is Usfiso Zungu, also known as GWABINI, as we know him in this case. Now, let me just say that I am highly impressed with how the defense is handling their case so far. The witnesses that they've called, yes, we're only 3 witnesses in, but they have been the most relevant witness when it comes to this particular case. So as you all know, Constable Zungu's testimony was that on the night of the incident, he was at the Basotho hostel, having been invited by a certain GWABINI, and he basically was with all the accused, allegedly was with all the accused before this court. Now, this GWABINI is the guy that is before the court. He does introduce himself as Usfiso Zungu, but he does say that he is well known as GWABINI. So Umnisi asked him if he would prefer to be called GWABINI in court, and he does say yes, he would prefer to be called GWABINI. Now, as you know, Umnisi, when he starts with his examination in chief, usually does basically introduce the witness and just lets them know the ground rules and how they can be free and freedom of speech and all those sort of things. So he does do this with the witness, and he says, you know, finally the day that we've been waiting for, or you have been waiting for, has finally arrived. You are before this court. We're here to talk about the Senzo Meyiwa case, and the reason why you're here is because there was an investigation that was done that led to the arrest of these 5 accused. So please, can you take a moment and look at the accused and tell us if you know any of them. Now, GWABINI starts with accused number 1 and says that he does know accused number 1. He basically does explain that he is his brother because he is the son of his mom's elder sister. So basically, inganega mamkulu in our tradition, guys, that is your brother. And then we go on to accused number 2. He says yes, he knows accused number 2 from back home, even though they aren't from the same village, but they usually go to Ingoma, which is something that Undanzi has told this court that yena uyidansela ingoma. So GWABINI says he knows Undanzi from Engomeni, and basically they grew up together even though they were from different villages. They went to different schools, but their schools would often meet for soccer games and all those sort of things. When we go on to accused number 3, he says he does not know accused number 3 at all. Then we go into accused number 4, whom he says yes, he does know accused number 4, and he basically says accused number 4 is umalume from the mom's side. So basically accused number 4 is from his mom's side. And then when asked about accused number 5, he says yes, accused number 5, he knows him, he is umzala wakhe. So basically we get a picture that GWABINI knows 4 of the 5 accused before this court. Now Umnisi on Monday basically takes GWABINI through the evidence of a Constable Zungu, where he testified on the 7th of September, basically putting us in the picture of how allegedly he met all the 5 accused at GWABINI's place, starting with GWABINI calling him on that morning and inviting him to a party that was going to happen at Hostela. GWABINI denies every single bit of this evidence. And he also goes into the issue of uMakhosonke being there and how GWABINI told uZungu to pick up uMakhosonke at Carlton Center, and all those details that we all know too well with regards to Zungu's evidence. Everything that Umnisi was putting from Zungu's evidence, GWABINI just kept on saying, unamanga. That was the word of the week, unamanga. Now, when Mnisi questions if there were ever such conversations that were had on the 26th of October in 2014, GWABINI basically says this person is lying, because the first time this person actually came to where I stay at Basutu Hostel was in 2017. Now, guys, I've been saying this. You can go back to all my previous videos. Zungu knows the accused, yes. However, he knows them from a completely different incident which he made relevant to 2014 when he came to testify. I've been saying this, and today GWABINI came and proved exactly that. Now, Mnisi continues to leave the evidence of Zungu, where he talks about how the accused disappeared and came back running into GWABINI's room, and accused number 1 had a gun and accused number 2 had a gun, or something to that effect. GWABINI just denies every single bit of this evidence. Now, what is surprising on Monday that happened after the lunch break is that Baloyi then came forward and says, has Umnisi actually explained to this witness section 204, and says that this witness is a section 204. Now, this was surprising to me because, to my understanding, a section 204 witness is a witness that is snitching on the people that he was committing a crime with. Now, when GWABINI is called by the defense, he cannot be a section 204. From the side of the defense, which was Mnisi's argument to say, I don't understand why the states want us to read section 204 to this witness, because he was a state witness and they chose not to call him. But now they're telling us to read section 204. What for? Because he's here to explain and also deny everything that was said by Zungu. So how is he implicating himself if he's denying the evidence of Constable Zungu? He also points out that this witness denies making this particular statement. So there isn't no implication of this witness in this particular statement, because he says he never made a statement. So how can he be implicated in the commission of this crime? Now, in Baloyi's arguments, he says, we heard from Brigadier Kininda that they got information about Constable Zungu's presence at the hostel through GWABINI. So, guys, Indaba kaZungu is a mess, because one, Absalom Zungu was the person who talked about accused 1 and 2 according to Kininda. And then Absalom told his son, Constable Zungu, which is according to the statement of Absalom Zungu. But then the same Constable Zungu now becomes the main witness, because he then comes and says, no, he was with these accused. But then the only reason why he said he was with these accused is because GWABINI is the one that said, no, Constable Zungu was there. Now, finally, Judge Rata basically says Baloyi needs to read section 203 and 204 to the witness, and basically they are warning the witness. To me, this sounded more like a threat, because I don't understand why they're warning the witness when this witness clearly says, hey, I don't have a statement. Umnisi basically says, the state is warning this witness because he is preempting that he will be asking questions that will implicate this witness. But I am leading this witness based on what I'm leading him on. So there's nothing that implicates this witness in what I'm leading him on. Now, as Umnisi is taking the witness through Zungu's testimony, he basically gets to the part about Usnako. Now, he says that in Zungu's testimony, he speaks about GWABINI throwing away a particular gun, and that gun that accused number one allegedly gave to him on the 26th of October was not the same gun that was used to shoot Usnako. Now, Baloyi stands up with this and objects and says, the issue of Usnako was that the gun was thrown in a river. Now, this is where the implication that I'm talking about comes in, because Baloyi is throwing in the issue of Usnako and GWABINI shooting Usnako into the spanner, whereas Umnisi was leading the witness based on Constable Zungu's evidence and not his statement. This is when Ngumalo stands up and says, actually, Ubaloyi is wrong in saying the issue of Usnako was raised in the testimony of Constable Zungu, because when he testified, he didn't speak about the issue of Usnako until the cross-examination by Ngumalo. Now, we went back and forth with this issue to say, the issue of Usnako was raised in the cross-examination and not examination in chief. And basically right now what Umnisi is doing is taking the witness through the evidence in chief of a Constable Zungu. Now, Judge Rata says, no, but evidence should be laid in its entirety. No. Who said that? Why are they wanting to tell the defense how to lead their witness? Baloyi also states that evidence should be laid in totality. Now, I remembered a small little thing about the evidence about the cell phones, where the state picked and chose what they wanted to lead when it came to the cell phone evidence. Conveniently, they didn't want to lead the evidence about accused number 3's phone being in Johannesburg during the time of the incident. It was Mgomezulu who decided to read through all of those records for us to actually know accused number 3's location around 8 o'clock on the night of the incident. So why do they want the defense to lead in the way that they want? Now, when Umnisi continues with leading this evidence, he says, I've taken you through basically the testimony of Constable Zungu, and you've been constantly saying, ay, unamanga. So why is it that you say that Constable Zungu unamanga when it comes to this whole testimony? So GWABINI basically explains to the court that the reason why he's saying Uzungu unamanga is because the last he had seen Uzungu was around 1998 when they were still kids, and then the next time he saw Zungu was in 2017. Now, he says he saw him in 2017, and he starts explaining how it went about that he saw Uzungu, which this version of events actually corroborates version accused number 1, where he says he was in Phosphorus and he was driving a bicycle, something to that effect, and he was called by Umuzi and Muzi, Tova, Makosonge, and Zungu. So when they called him, he was busy trying to work and getting Amakesi sorted. So what Muzi did is that he went with Zungu, Makosonge, and Tova in Zungu's car. Allegedly, he was driving a white Polo with the registration B, which means it was a police vehicle that he was driving. But this was in 2017. And basically he went to do what he needed to do, and then he met them at his place, and Muzi is the one that took them to his place. And he explains that Muzi basically said, and GWABINI basically says that this was a surprise to him, because one, he never had Zungu's number, and it was completely a surprise to him that they had come to visit him. Yes, he knew Makosonge, but they had never told him that they would be coming to visit. Now he goes on to explain that when he saw them at his place now, Zungu was smoking outside and his car was parked just in front of his house. Now, guys, I need you to understand why this white Polo is a problem. Now, the events of 2017, which is GWABINI and Muzi Spia's version of how Zungu came into the mix, is that Zungu was driving a white Polo. Now, if you recall, Muzi Spia's confession mentions a white Polo, but now they're trying to make it seem as though that white Polo was driven by accused number 5 on the night of the incident. Please stay with me. So Muzi Spia's confession talks about a white Polo, and Ndanzi's confession talks about a silver Polo. Tell me why this is important, because now when they went into the records of the vehicle hiring company, accused number 5 had hired a white Polo and a silver Polo. Now, Muzi's confession talks about a white Polo, which matches the white Polo ga Zungu, but then Zungu mentions a silver Polo, which matches with the Polo from the hiring company for accused number 5. Stay with me, guys. Now, GWABINI basically talks about what Zungu and the rest were drinking on the day. He says there was no koloko there. There was no koloko. The whole Jameson story, Zungu tried to make himself like, we rich boy, Pussy Jameson. No, there was no koloko. They were drinking Heineken cans on the day, and this is what happened. This is what happened. Now, Umnisi continues to lead the witness on Monday, and he gets into an issue of an arrest. Now, he says, you spoke about an arrest, that you were arrested in June of 2020. If that has something to do with this case, then you can continue telling us about that arrest. But if it has nothing to do with this case, then please can we leave that section out? And he's like, no, it has everything to do with this case. I was arrested in connection to the Senzo Meyiwa case. Tell me why the state has never told us that GWABINI was once a suspect in the Senzo Meyiwa case. Now, when he takes us through how he was arrested, he said that he remembers that he received a call from Moses Biya. When he received a call from Moses Biya, he was basically asking him when he would be returning home. Now, as he's questioning, hey, what has happened? Why are you asking me all these questions? He says that the phone seemed to have been snatched away from accused number one. And then when he tried to call back, the phone was then off. So he says that he had been home in Mahlabatini and he was coming back to Johannesburg. When he got to Johannesburg on a Monday, he got back to Johannesburg on a Sunday. Then on Monday, he says that he had finished cooking at the N section of the hostel and he sleeps at the S section of the hostel. So he says that he had cooked and finished and then he went to go to his room at the S section. He says as he's sleeping in his room, he hears commotion at the N section, and there was a whole lot of commotion and basically people asking where GWABINI's room is. So apparently they came now to the S section and they kicked down one of the doors at the S section, which wasn't his room. When they kicked down that door, they asked where is GWABINI's room, and then the people led them to GWABINI's room. He said that the police then kicked down his door and came into his room. Now he says that he sleeps naked, so when they came into his room he was naked. They tied him down, then they put on handcuffs on him. When they realized that he had when they realized that he was naked, they were like, oh, we should give this person an opportunity to get dressed. So they uncuffed one hand, he put on a pair of undies and he put on an overall, and then he was arrested. Now he says that during his arrest, he remembers that there was Umukhane there was Maphumulo there was Ubtelezi there. I think he also mentions Umunareng. And he basically says that he was questioned about the death of Senzo Meyiwa, and one of the police officers, I think he said it was Maphumulo, who tried to put a gun under his basement or under his base, right? Under his bed. And he says he saw that he was trying to put this gun under his bed, and when he asked him, why are you putting this gun under my bed, this particular gentleman slapped him across the face. And that was the first time the assault actually started with him. Now, what Umnisi did when it comes to the issue of the door being kicked down, he says, did the door get damaged when they kicked it down? And GWABINI says yes, it did get damaged. Until today that door is still damaged. So Umnisi is like, we're gonna need another inspection in local. Now guys, you can see the way in which these people do things. They call it a modus operandi, right? These people do things in exactly the same way. There's no way that everyone that's involved in this case talks about the same methods used by the police. Now, if you remember Moses Biya's testimony with regards to his uncle's place in Tembisa when he got arrested, there was a kicking of the door. And here GWABINI is talking about kicking of the door, which he can still prove because the door is still damaged. Now, Now, Baloyi does object to this evidence that is led by this witness, and he says that this evidence is irrelevant. And Umnisi's response is that this evidence is actually very relevant because it's relevant to this particular case. This person also now is telling us that he got arrested and assaulted by the same police that the accused in this case are saying that they were assaulted by. So it is very much relevant, and we want to find out how he got to be discharged, basically, because he was also arrested for the Senzo Meyiwa case. And guys, isn't it funny that there was a revolver involved? Because when he explains the gun that Umapumulo tried to put under his bed, it was a revolver. So why are the police planting revolvers in GWABINI's room when Usenzo was shot with the 9mm? Now, as he continues to lead the evidence, he basically says, yes, then he was arrested, he was taken out of his room, and he remembers that the car in which he traveled in was a red car. And then he says that the officer that was transporting him, he does explain that he has a big belly and a funny looking head, and he tries to remember the name, and then finally the name comes to his mind and he says it was Mohane. Now, when he says this, the state then says that some of the accused actually indicated or gave the name to the witness, to which everyone was surprised because no one heard anyone say anything. And the judge then makes a comment to say, if this is true, then it wouldn't be the first time that a witness is threatened or a witness is shown signs in this court. To which I think is totally unfair, because why are you bringing up those issues when the state is talking about someone talking out something that you or you yourself never heard, and that the state also says it is said that, which means the state never heard this particular thing itself. So those are the proceedings on Monday. On Tuesday, the first thing that Mnisi addressed when it comes to the proceedings is the issue of Baloyi saying that one of the witnesses spoke out Mohane's name to the witness. And he says that the accused are saying that this is not the first time that this is happening or this certain allegation has been made, and they're finding it's very, very unfair. So they would like it to be ironed out. Basically, they want it to be investigated. The state needs to bring proof of what they're talking about, and so that we can move on a clean slate, knowing that this never took place. Now, the judge says, I am a very fair judge, and I don't pay attention to small little things. The state doesn't have proof that happened, and I myself don't have proof, so I'm willing to just let it go. And he says, I'm a very lenient judge because there was a fight that broke out in this court, and I never said anything about that. But the thing is, if you're not interested in these smaller little things, why do you keep bringing them up every time something comes up? Because the fact that you said it wasn't the first time that this is happening means that you have that at the back of your head. Now, one of the things that I took issue on Monday when Mnisi was leading the witness is that when GWABINI mentioned that he had last seen Uzungu in 1998, he said that wayefunda usekendia. Now, usekendia in Zulu is actually grade 2, right? Sorry, in English is grade 2, but Mnisi kept saying standard 2, and I felt that there was an issue with that. Luckily, on Tuesday, he came back to correct that, to say, you mentioned something about second year. What grade actually is that? And GWABINI clarifies that it was like the second year at school, so basically it's grade 2. And he even goes into mentioning USAP B, because that's how it used to be called back in the days. Now, GWABINI on Tuesday takes us through what happened when he was arrested. He goes back to the details that when the police officers kicked his door open and came into his room, there was a police officer with a little screen that he put on his chest. He doesn't know what the screen was for. He put that screen on his chest, and then they drove off in a red Golf. And then he says that in the car, whilst they were driving, they showed him pictures of amantombazana kaSibiya. So they asked him, does he know these people? And he says yes, he knows them from back home. And he says that he was then taken near Phosphorus. Now, this area, as we all know by now, is the area that we did an inspection in local in this case, where Muzi said that he was assaulted. Now, GWABINI is coming, a person that was also arrested with regards to the Senzo Meyiwa case, also stating that he was taken to the same municipal area and he was assaulted. He says the very first person that assaulted him at that area is Ubuthelezi. As he was handcuffed to the back and sitting down, Ubuthelezi basically stepped on the handcuffs, and he himself still has injuries on his arms or on his wrists and scars showing that he was injured by the handcuffs on that day. Amongst the other things that he mentions that were done to him on the day, he says he was kicked around like a drum filled with water, and also that he also was suffocated with a plastic bag. So as I said, modus operandi, the same way of doing things, it's assault, and get people to sign statements. Basically, in this case, 0 investigations, 0 facts given. It's just abuse. As you know, Mnisi is very good when it comes to the measuring of the wounds. So he does request that the wounds or the scars of GWABINI are measured, and he puts them on the record. And Mnisi, being Mnisi, he says the scar on the left arm is terrible. What I like about what Mnisi did when leading this particular witness is try to get descriptions of the people that actually arrested GWABINI. He already explained that uMabena had a hoarse voice and he had a gap on his tooth. I don't know what Mabena looks like, but I'm guessing that's what he looked like. He is no more, so we can't really confirm. And then he explains what Ubuthelezi looks like. Now, when he describes Ubuthelezi, he mentions a gold tooth, he mentions dark skin with spots, and he mentions a light lip. Now, I will try and attach a picture of Constable Ubuthelezi here so that you can see the description that GWABINI was giving, and it does match this particular EMPD officer here. So basically explains that whilst they were assaulting him, he did scream so loud that there was a vehicle that was passing in the distance by the robots, and that vehicle stopped and actually looked in their direction. And when the cops or the EMPD officers noticed that the car had stopped and they basically were looking at what they were doing, they then took him back into the car and they drove off and they took him to a cemetery. And that's where they assaulted him until 4 o'clock in the morning. He says that he had no recollection of the time, but what he does know is that by the time he reached the police station, he was taken to Primrose police station, and the time in which he arrived there was around 5 o'clock in the morning. Mind you, he had been arrested the previous night around 10-11 o'clock. Now, he says that he was taken to Vosloorus police station before going to Primrose, and the reason why he was taken to Vosloo is that at Vosloorus they took his thumbprints, and then they took him to Primrose. That's where he did his COVID-19 test. Now, he says that on Tuesday, he had been told that he's at Primrose, so obviously he had made a phone call to some of his friends and they had brought him a jersey because he did say that he was feeling a bit cold on the day. So when Mohane came back to check on him on the Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm just a bit mistaken with the dates, guys, you'll forgive me, but he says that Mohane then realized that he now has a jersey and says, oh, so now people know that you're here because now you've got a jersey and I don't know where you got the jersey from. Now, a thing that really sort of took me aback with regards to his testimony is when he mentioned that the jersey that he had been wearing, there were wounds on his arms and the jersey was sort of sticking to the wound, and it was terrible to listen to, guys. How can people be so inhumane? Now, he says that after Mohane had noticed that he now had a jersey, he said that Mohane then came back on the same day, and when he came back, he came with Brigadier Kininda and Umukhola. And he even says Mfundisi, this lady over here, because she was right there at court. Mnisi basically says, so how did you know the names of these people? How did you know it was Mfundisi and Ukininda? He says that they introduced himself. This lady, I don't remember the name that they gave me, but I know that they said that they call her Mfundisi. I don't remember her surname, but they said they call her Mfundisi. And then with Ukininda, he said Kabadia. Yo, guys, did I not laugh? He meant Brigadier. He says, no, he says he was Kabadia, I think, or something to that effect. So we continued on the tune of Ukabadi. Now, what is surprising about this particular witness is that he says on that day when Umukhane took him to Ukabadia and Umukhola, they did say that they writing a statement, right? And when they say they're writing a statement, he basically says, writing a statement about what? Because I don't know anything when it comes to the death of Senzo Meyiwa. And they basically said, well, Muzi has already implicated you in his statement. We have a statement from Moses Bia and he's implicated you. So he then says, okay, if Muzi has said something that involves me, take everything that Muzi said and put it in that statement that you are saying that I need to write, and then I will sign, because maybe ukhuluma ngento but mina angiyazi. So write what Muzi wrote and I will gladly sign that. Now, when it comes to the honesty of GWABINI, you can tell that he's very honest. Now, remember, the stories we've been hearing from the accused is that they were never read his rights. And if GWABINI was going about in the same tune, it would be as if like he's just copying the rest of the accused. He basically says that, Kininda did read me rights. he talked about rights, and then he gave me a piece of paper to say, these are your rights, read through them. But I didn't read through them. I just took that paper and I put it on the side. Then he told me to sign a particular statement that he had written. He never read it back to me. He never did any of that. But he did read, "Am I right? I have rights to do this. I have rights to do this." But I never read those rights. They were never read back to me. And also the statement that he was writing, I have no idea what he was writing. He just told me that he wrote what Muzi had written in his statement, and so I signed. So he basically says that after they had written whatever statement they had written, they gave him some papers and he basically signed, and his signature is an S. He basically initialed on his on this particular statement. He says that after that, he was then taken to court. The same guy, Muhane, in a red car, took him to the court in Phosphorus, but he never really went to go ubingelela, because he says, "Kwathiwa uyobingelela." So he never went into the court. Yes, they drove through the back, but he never went into the courtroom. He then was told by Muhane that he's been given bail of 2,000 Rand and he needs to pay that. And he says, "My goodness, how am I going to pay this money? Because I'm barely making 350 a day." He basically phones a friend nearby and says, "Please, can you loan me 2,000 Rand? My bail is 2,000 Rand. I'll pay you back," or whatever the case might be. The friend comes with the 2,000 Rand. They pay for bail and he's let go. Mind you, this is all happening outside of the courtroom. Now, he does mention that the person that he had requested to fetch the money from, the gentleman from the shop, is Ulungsani Ndwandwe. We've heard this name before in this courtroom. And he says that Ulungsani basically went to Stolo and got the 2,000 Rand bail. They paid the bail and he was let go. Now, he does explain that he did tell the police that he was injured and would like to see a doctor. And the police basically ignored him and said that and he said that he would tell the police, and Obuthelezi said to him, "Thina samaphoyisa angeke siboshwe amaphoyisa agqoke uniform." So what Ubuthelezi basically said is, they're big cops, they can't be arrested by the SAPS, so whatever he wants to do, he can go do that, but they'll never be arrested. So he does say that he did go to a doctor that did treat him for the wounds that he had sustained with the handcuffs on his hand, and basically that was what had happened when it comes to his arrest. Now Umnisi goes into asking GWABINI, "So after that arrest, did you ever see Muhane, Muhola, and Kininda?" He says, "Well, I never saw them after that, but they did call me around 2022, and basically I was told that I needed to come and testify." So he says that he went to the offices of the DPP about 3 times, and that is when they were in preparation for him to come to court or something to that effect. Now, it is so interesting what happened in the DPP offices when he was being consulted. Now, the first thing that we need to take note of is that he was told that every time he needed to go to the DPP offices, he would be picked up by one particular gentleman by the name of Mulawutsi. He says that this Mulawutsi gentleman was driving a white BMW, and he says he does remember the registration of the car. It's just that he doesn't have it in mind right now. But he does say that he also took a photo of this particular BMW without Mulawutsi noticing. And this is the person that was allocated to him to drive him to the DPP offices every time he needed to consult. Please do keep this in mind. It will come in handy just now. Now we go into the issue of the DPP offices and his first visit there. When he starts taking us through that, on the first visit, he got there, he got to the security. The securities then took him to the offices, and at the offices, he was told to wait outside. Baloyi then objects and says, "What is the relevance of all of this?" Nisi basically says, "We need this information because this is information on how this particular witness met with the state, and we would like to know what happened with the state." And Nisi basically says there isn't prosecutor witness confidentiality clause. So basically, we don't understand why Baloyi is objecting. The judge then says there actually is a clause, or there is prosecutor and witness privilege. Baloyi objects for the second time and says, the issue of the consultation with the prosecutors shouldn't be relevant to this and all that. And Nisi basically says, well, this witness is here to assist the court, and it is of importance that he was also arrested for the very same case, questioned about Senzo Meyiwa, assaulted, as the accused in this case also say they have been assaulted. The judge then says there's a world of difference between GWABINI and the accused, because the accused have been charged and GWABINI was not. And Omnisi just says, I'm trying to show the methodology of the investigation here, to say this person who's a witness also was arrested with the same methodologies that the investigating officers were using with the accused. And Umnisi basically says, without asking or leading this witness through all of this, I will be constrained when I do my arguments. And the judge says, I will never constrain you. Don't blame it on me. But you're the one who keep on raising all these issues about the accused being charged and GWABINI not being charged, and you don't want Umnisi to lead the witness on what he wants to lead the witness on, so that he can argue at the end of the case. He says the first time that he went to the DPP office, remember the security took him there, he was told to wait outside because there was someone still inside. Now he says the person that was inside in the consultation was Constable Zungu. So he saw Constable Zungu at the DPP office on his first consultation. He says that he basically explained what the office looked like. He explained that there's a TV, there's this. Uzungu walked out of the offices with another lady, and basically then he was asked to come inside. Now he basically takes us through meeting Baloyi, and Baloyi asking him if everything is okay, if he's okay, and he says that, he has been threatened with either prison or death, so he's not okay. And Baloyi basically tells him that he needs to come and testify, and he says that he was confused as to what he would be testifying about. He even questioned Baloyi why he would be testifying. He says what was explained to him by Kininda is that Muzi's statement basically implicates him. So if Muzi's statement is read in court, then he will be going to prison. So basically they had threatened him with going to prison if he doesn't come to testify. Now the judge asked a question. Hey, Judge Raza, guys. He asked the question, was I presiding in that matter at that time, or was it another judge? What does that have to do with anything? We're dealing with the issues about consultation with the DPP in the Senzo Meyiwa case. Uguti, who was the presiding judge at that time, is irrelevant. And he's busy asking the witness these questions as if he wants to disregard all this information because it was during the time in which it was Maumela who was presiding. But it's not about the presiding judge, it's about the consultation. Now, Uzungu says the issue that he took with the particular statement that Baloyi read to him is that on the first couple of lines of the statement, it mentioned something about Usfiso Zungu being Unduli. Right? Now, guys, you will remember, I've constantly said this. When Constable Zungu came to testify before this court, he said Sfiso Zungu was accused number 5. Kininda then came and said Sfiso Zungu is actually GWABINI. So I think Constable Zungu had messed up the names in court. Right? So he says that the first time he went to consult, Baloyi read the statement and it mentioned something about Sfiso Zungu Nduli. And he was like, this can't be my statement, because I would never say Usfiso Zungu or Waganduli, because Usfiso Zungu is myself. So he was like, this is not my statement. This can't be my statement. And he basically was like, then I can't come and testify on this statement because the statement is incorrect. Now he says another issue that he raised with the state is the issue of the signature on that particular statement that they had showed him on the first consultation. He says it was a full-blown signature, and he says, I don't sign like that. When I signed the document that Kininda gave me and said it was Muzi's statement, I signed with the S. So this is definitely not my statement. He said then he then said that Kininda Muhola Muhane then discussed and he left. Now he says the second time he went to the state prosecutor's offices is when he was also, it was a month before he was going to get married. So it was about August, because he got married in September. And they came to him with another statement that mentioned something about accused number 2. Now he says, how am I mentioning accused number 2 being arrested when accused number 2 was not yet arrested? So he questioned, how am I mentioning accused number 2's arrest in my statement when accused number 2 had not yet been arrested? And that was an issue that he took up with that particular statement on the second time. So he's like, you guys are wasting my time. You want me to come and testify, but I'm testifying on things that don't make sense. I'm actually preparing for a wedding. I don't have time for this. And he left. That was the second time. Now he goes on to the third time he went to the DPP office. He says now the third time he went there, he was contacted by Mohane. When Mohane contacted him, he said to him, there's going to be a gentleman by the name Udlamini that is going to come and pick you up and take you to court. Now, this is the time that you are going to go to court. You need to go and testify. You're done with your wedding. You're done with everything. You need to go testify. He says, okay, I agreed that this particular Dlamini would come and pick me up. And then I waited. And when time kept going past, and eventually it was around 8:30, and this particular Dlamini, who was said to have been coming from Heidelberg, had not yet come through. So I decided to call an Uber. He says that he requested an Uber. He took himself to the DPP office. He got to the DPP office and he says, I'm meant to be testifying. The state said I'm meant to be testifying. I'm here. I don't know where the court is. Where is the court? So they directed him to the court. He says that he was in black tracksuits. He came directly to the courtroom. And when he got to the doors of the court, he met Muhola. Muhola said to him, if you do dare go into that courtroom, you do die. If you do dare, you do die. Muhola said, Moge wangena through those doors, you will see flames. And he says, I was right here in the doors of court, but I couldn't come in. But now, guys, let's think about it. This person was told all along that you should not go with any other driver besides Umula Woods. On that particular day, when Zungu was testifying, this witness is now told to go with the Dlamini. Is that not suspicious, like at all? Ubano Dlamini, and what did he want to do with GWABINI? Now, mind you, on the same day that he says he met Muhola then takes him up to the offices of the finance team. This is where apparently you log your claims for the transportation that is used. So he basically went to go log a claim for the Uber that he had used to come to court. And the lady at finance says, there's no money available. Leave your bank details and we'll send the money through to your bank. Muhola then offers GWABINI a cup of tea. A cup of tea for what? GWABINI says, I'm not drinking any tea. You did not want me to go to court. I've come here with an Uber. I've wasted my money. And now these people are telling me they'll pay me back. So I'm leaving. And he leaves. Guys, GWABINI dodged a bullet twice in one day. I'm telling you now. He dodged a Dlamini bullet and he dodged a cup of tea bullet. Now, if that's not his ancestors, I don't know what is. Ancestors and God said, not today, Satan. Because literally, that was his day. That was his day to be unalived. I kid you not. Now, on Wednesday, the 26th of November, we basically continued with the evidence of GWABINI, where he picked up where he left off, where Mfundisi had told him to turn back. And we basically go through that evidence yet again on Wednesday. So GWABINI basically takes us through again the whole process of going to the DPP offices 3 times, and what happened the first time, what happened the second time, what happened the third time. And basically Umnisi then takes him through how a statement is supposed to be deposed. He says, do you know that when you write a statement, you sit on the other end of the table, another person sits on this side, you dictate to them what they need to write down, or you write it yourself and then they need to read it back to you, and this and this and this and this. Did that happen with this particular statement that is said to be yours? And he says no. Now, what I liked about Umnisi leading this particular witness is that he did not touch the statement at all. He did not go into the contents of the statement, nothing. He just kept disputing the statement without even referring to it. Love that for him. You'll find out why that came in handy. Now, Umnisi asked the question, did you depose a statement? Do you have a statement? Did you write a statement? He says no. And Umnisi is like, okay, now at least we know that you did not make any statement in this particular case. Then he says, now let us go into these details that Uzungu gives us. And it's a bit macky. The details are very, very macky because we are meant to believe that the killing of Senzo Meyiwa was actually planned, and the planning took place hostela on the 26th. And the planning actually took place hostela, but we don't know when the planning took place. We don't have dates. We don't know the people who were involved in the planning. We don't have any of that information. All we know is that Zungu says that this is what happened. And he basically asked the witness, so what is your comment to this? And he says, my comment to this, guningi actually, that I could say, but let me just start here. Everything that Zungu is saying is a lie, especially when it comes to the events of 26 October 2014, because in 2014, I had no knowledge of Zungu. Like, we did not meet in 2014. I did not see him in 2014. I had last seen him in 1998 when we were about 8 or 7. And then I saw him in 2017. The details of how I saw him in 2017 are already explained here. So the whole 2016 hostel thing, planning of Senzo's death, non-existent. Now, Ubaloyi does object during leading of Umnisi here, where he says, you know, Umnisi has been asking the same questions over and over. Like, why is he asking the same questions? Not you, Baloyi. Not you who let us sit and listen to you asking the same questions about bank statements over and over. Now you want to complain? No. Omnisi again asked the issue of Muhola, how Muhola stopped him from coming into the court, and asked, what did you make of that? And basically he says, well, what I made of that is that I was going to mess up Zungu's evidence. That's basically the gist of the conversation that I had with Muhola, that Zungu's understand, and if I come in now, I am going to mess shit up. Then they go into the very much awaited issue of, firstly, GWABINI fearing for his life. As you recall, Gininda did tell us that, you know, there's fear of reprisal, there's fear of death, and what. And he says, because Baloyi and the state and Gininda, oh, they're lying. I was never scared for my life. I turned at the doors of courts by Umuhola coming to testify. There was no way that I was scared for my life. Then to clarify the issue of Usnako, GWABINI is asked, you know, Zungu says in 2014 Usnako was shot or something to that effect, and basically the gun that was given, he was asked, you were asked, GWABINI, about a 38 special that was thrown into a river after the shooting of Usnako. GWABINI says that's a lie, because firstly, Usnako in 2014 was in grade 11. And he couldn't have been in Johannesburg in October because he was at school in KZN during that period. So that's just a lie. Now I just cannot wait for a family member to come with details of Snako's shooting at this point, because wow. Nisi then asks, so you do know Usnako? And he says, yes, I know Usnako. And actually, this whole thing of talking about Usnako, because Usnako is no more. Usnako was in grade 11 in 2014, Utimalume to accused number 1. And when he passed, he was actually staying with me in Fosterers. So basically, we need to now find out Usnako, when did he die, when was he shot? Now, Mnisi was finished with leading the witness, and Ramusipili commenced with his cross-examination. And what I loved about Ramusipili's cross-examination, it was straight to the point. GWABINI, you say you know accused 1, 2, 4, and 5. Were you with them on the 26th of October? GWABINI says no. Did you call Zungu on the 26th of October? GWABINI says no. Did you tell Zungu about fetching Makosonke at Carlton Center? GWABINI says no. Then he says, you say you know accused number 2 from back home. Did you have his numbers? Were you in contact with accused number 2? He says, yes, I knew accused number 2. Yes, we did have each other's numbers, but the only time we would basically talk is if Kunengoma somewhere and he's inviting me. But accused number 2 stays in a completely different area from where I stay. I'm from Imatlabatini. He's from Tokolo. So yes, the villages are different, but we definitely knew each other. Then he asks him, you say you stay at the Basotho hostel. Does accused number 2 know where you stay? And GWABINI says, I don't even think he doesn't know it. He's never been there. So there's no way that he could have been there in October. He doesn't know where I stay, this person, but we know each other. The most important question Ramusipili asked, did you host a party in Fosterers on the 26th of October? No. Did accused number 2, 3, 4, 5 come to this particular party? GWABINI says no. Now he goes into the issue of the party being fabricated. He says, so you're saying that this story about the party at Foster's Hostel on the 26th was fabricated? He said yes. Then he confirms the issue of his arrest and the police that were involved in his arrest, where he says there was a Mapumulo, there was a Butelezi. What are they, cops? And he says, yeah, they are traffic cops. And basically confirms the uniform that they were wearing on the day. And how they were dressed, and Ramsipile was basically trying to touch on the issue of the SWAT uniform, but he didn't really go into too much detail about that. Now Ramsipile also questions GWABINI with the issue of Ndanzi's photo that was shown to GWABINI. I don't know if I had mentioned this in GWABINI's evidence in chief, but he does say that he was shown a picture of accused number 2 and was asked if he knows the person. He did say that he does know accused number 2 when Mogola showed him the picture, and Mogola's response to that was that they are also looking for him. Now, this is just proof that GWABINI was arrested before Ndanzi. However, there are OB books that have been brought to court that are stating that GWABINI was actually arrested on the 23rd of June, which I'm not really understanding how. Ramasipili also questions what GWABINI's reaction was when he found out that Ndanzi was later arrested after him, and he says that he was shocked, and he sort of almost goes into a bit of character evidence where he says, you know, abafana baka Ndanzi are abafana that grew up in Ndaweni that are not really close with a lot of other people. They are into ingoma, and anything that is related to violence and guns is not the sort of thing that they would be involved in. And he even goes as far as saying abafana baka Ndanzi are just popularly known in the area for being abafana that work in the mines and all of that. So this whole violence thing is not their thing. And Ramasipili basically stops him and says, hey, we don't want to go into character evidence here. And guys, yeah, we really don't want to go into character evidence when it comes to this case, because then if we start going to the character of the other accused, questionable. So the final few questions that Ramasipili goes into is the issue of the party, where he says, Zungu is the only person that has testified about a party, a hostela. Do you know of any other person that has ever spoken about a party happening a hostela on the 26th of October? And GWABINI says, yeah, Uzungu na manga. If there's another person that says there was a party, na yelo muntu na manga. So you want muntu na manga. With that completes Ramasipili's cross-examination. Numalo then commences his cross-examination, where he would be cross-examining the witness on both accused number 4 and accused number 5. Basically, he starts with accused number 4, where he says, you said you know accused number 4, do you know where he's from? And he says, yes, Ngyamazi, he's from Osutu. And he says, whereabout is Osutu? And he mentions that it's Kwanongoma, and he's from Imahlabatini, but they do know each other. Ongumalo points out that Constable Zungu had said that accused number 4 is from Opisweni, and GWABINI is like, accused number 4 is from Osutu, not Opisweni. So bonakalisa nje vele ukuthi uZungu was lying. He doesn't know this particular accused. Malo basically asks the questions that Ramasipili asked with regards to, was accused number 5 there on the day of the incident? Was accused number 4 there on the day of the incident? Was accused number 5 driving a polo? Uzungu says, yeah, accused number 5 was never there. I was never there. In 2014, Uzungu was never there. There was never such a thing. And also he goes into the evidence of the hired cars, where he says there was a white polo and a silver polo. GWABINI says, hey, ungangibuza ngalezo zinto, isitori sazungamanga. Yonke into ehlangene noZungu nemoto yonke into, like yonke into yamanga GWABINI. Numalo touches on a very important aspect on GWABINI's arrest, where he says, you know, when you were arrested, were there any items taken from you? And he says, yes, my cell phone was taken. It was a Huawei P10. And Numalo asks if there were pictures on his phone. He says, lots of pictures. Were there pictures of accused number 1 on his phone? He says, yes, we had pictures together with accused number 1. He says, were those the only pictures of accused number 1 on your phone? He was like, no, I had various pictures of accused number 1 on my phone. And then he goes into the evidence of Constable Zungu, where he says that he had shown his father a picture of accused number 1 and said that the picture was taken, was stolen. But in his evidence in chief, he does say that he did receive a photo from GWABINI. And GWABINI says that that then proves that Constable Zungu knows the whereabouts of my phone, because since my arrest in 2020, I don't know the whereabouts of my phone. It's been off. And if Zungu is talking about pictures and saying that he got them from me, he must have gotten them from that particular phone that was confiscated from me when I was arrested. He then basically asked GWABINI when last he saw accused number 4 and 5. GWABINI says, I don't even remember when last I saw them, but labantu is not people that I usually chill with. Yes, ngiyabazi, yes, some of them be related with, but it's not really abantu that I stay and chill with most of the time. So I can't recall when last I saw them. That was the end of the cross-examination by Umalo. Now, Ubaloyi, when starting his cross-examination, he goes into the last issue that Umalo spoke about with regards to Umakosonke working. And Ubaloyi basically says, in 2014, you don't have any knowledge about Umakosonke being employed and all that in Rustenburg. And GWABINI basically says, I know that in 2014, in August, when we attended the wedding Ekaya, Umakosonke was at home, unemployed. So if you say that in October, I wouldn't know because I had last seen him at the wedding in August and he was unemployed in KZN. Then Baloyi goes into the issue of the evidence of GWABINI, where he says that he spent about 2 days testifying. However, he never once mentioned that a cell phone was taken from him during his arrest. And Ngumalo basically objects to this and says, well, if the witness wasn't asked, how was he supposed to just bring up that information? He was led by Umnisi and that information was not requested of him, so he couldn't have mentioned it. Baloyi basically says, well, this is an important aspect and he was taking us through what happened when he got arrested, but he never mentioned the issue of the cell phone. GWABINI's response to that is that, well, I may have forgotten, but my cell phone was definitely taken by the police when I was arrested. Now, he asked the question about accused number 2 and GWABINI's knowledge of accused number 2, where he says, would you say that you know accused number 2 well? And GWABINI says, no, I wouldn't say I know him well. Yes, I know him. We go to Ingoma together. We sit together. We chill together for those few minutes during Ingoma. We drink together, whatever we're drinking. But I wasn't yamazi, we're not best friends like that. And Baloyi basically says, so if someone said that you guys know each other well, that person would be lying. And GWABINI says, yes, they'd be lying. Now he goes into the record where accused number 2 says he knows, accused number 1 says that he knows Undanzi through GWABINI because GWABINI knows him well. Now, guys, it's really not that deep. It's really not that deep. If Umuzi says Undanzi knows GWABINI well, he might have meant that he knows him better than he does because he's closer to his brother than he is with him. You understand? So, and knowing a person well doesn't mean that you're close buddies and you know everything about them. No, we are mazgash. Like, umedo mazgash. But not what now Baloyi is trying to make that a thing. Accused number 1 said GWABINI knows Undanzi well, but GWABINI is saying that he doesn't know Undanzi that well. They know each other from Emeka. They go to Ingoma together. Baloyi, how is this helping us get to the bottom of the murder? Now, one of the questions that Baloyi asked GWABINI is the issue of him making calls with accused number 1's phone. GWABINI says, yes, at home, when I don't have minutes, I would use accused number 1's phone to make phone calls. And he says, have you ever sent accused number 1 a picture of accused number 2? Or sent accused number 2 a picture of accused number 1? Because it's said that your accused number 1's picture appears on accused number 2's phone. And GWABINI's response to this is like, please, can you show me the pictures that you keep referring to? Show me the pictures so that I'm able to tell you whether those pictures were in my phone or not. Because right now you just keep referring to pictures. I don't have any knowledge about what pictures you're talking about. Now, Baloyi goes into the issue of the red Golf that GWABINI mentioned in his evidence, and he says that, according to the evidence before the court, Umuhola was the regular driver of the red Golf and not Mohane. GWABINI says, I don't care who was the regular driver of that vehicle, but on the day that I was arrested, there was a red vehicle and it was driven by Mohane. Mohola was not even involved in my arrest. Now, Baloyi goes into the record and basically quotes where Kininda says that this particular vehicle was used by Mohola, and he also quotes where Mohola says he was taking accused number 1 to court using the same vehicle. Then GWABINI asked, on what day was that when she was taking accused number 1 to court? And Baloyi couldn't really answer the witness and says, it was on one of his appearances after his arrest. That is the car that Umuhola was driving. And GWABINI even says, but I'm telling you what happened. Muhola was not there when I was arrested, but the car definitely was. Then Baloyi says, let's go to the records of the 22nd of November where Muhola said, and GWABINI is like, Kosenkantolo, umshushisa kamusufaka Muhola klento, Muhola kangeni kwi-arrest yami, wayengekho ngiboshwa, imoto yona kodwa yayihamba uMukhane. Then Baloyi raises the issue that Mohola had stated that the red Golf was in an accident on the 4th of June and therefore couldn't have been the vehicle that was used to arrest GWABINI. Now on Thursday the 27th, Ramusipili, before the prosecutor continued with the cross-examination of GWABINI, puts it on record that the state had said the car had been involved in an accident on the 4th of June. However, they have gone to the record, and Kininda on the 29th of November speaks about Mohola driving this particular red car on the 19th or the 19th of June when they went to Undanzi. So now basically there's an argument that was the car really involved in the accident, and if it was, why is it that Kininda is mentioning the very same car on the 19th of June where Mohola said the car was in an accident on the 4th? Now guys, this might come in a bit handy, but knowing this case, none of the records of things are available. No AVLs, no nothing. We would like the accident report for the Golf 7 red. We would like an accident report because we don't have that. Right now it's just word of mouth. And Kininda's evidence is contradicting Mohola's evidence when it comes to this particular vehicle. Now, Mnisi basically says this issue can be put to rest now if the state can just make copies of the transcript. We read the transcript onto the record and then we're over and done with when it comes to the issue of this vehicle. But the judge is persistent that we should go into Mohola's evidence because she was the driver of the car. So basically she would have more information than what Kininda came to tell the court under oath. Rata makes an order that basically the information about the red Golf should be found from the government garage, where Ramusipili says, we don't have access to all of that, and he says he'll make an order and that can be requested so that the defense has that information. Now, when Baloyi continues with his cross-examination, he goes into the issue of the sections at the Phosphorus hostel, Basotho hostel, where he says to GWABINI, so were you staying at the N section at the Basotho hostel? And GWABINI says, no, I stayed at the S section. And he says, but you never mentioned anything about the N section. He's like, no, the N section is where I used to cook, but where I stayed and where I was arrested was at the S section. Now, he also questions the issue of the statement where he says that you said that you had signed an S on the statement, and GWABINI says, yes, that's exactly what happened. And then the state then says, in the statement, there's your name there, and it says that you're residing at the N section of the Basotho hostel. Mnisi objects to this and says the state cannot go into the particular statement because he needs to prove the statement first before he actually goes into asking the witness about this particular statement. Baloyi, in the response to Mnisi, says, firstly, the statement was made and this person asked Kininda to transfer what was in Mosisbia's statement into this particular statement. And then secondly, the defense has been cross-examining witnesses on other people's statements, so he doesn't understand why this is not allowed. Now, Baloyi, the defense never really answered you, but when the defense was cross-examining witnesses on other people's statements, it's statements that were already admitted before the court. That's the first thing. Second of all, prove the statement. Prove the statement, because this person says, yes, he said that they should transfer whatever Musi wrote onto this particular statement. But was it read back to him? Does he know what was written in the statement? No, he doesn't. So you need to prove that that statement is the statement that he signed the S on. And Baloyi couldn't do it, guys. Baloyi could not prove the statement. Now the judge finally intervenes and says, Baloyi, prove the statement. And so, for some reason, Baloyi just was lost. Was like, I'm sorry, my lord. And he is like, prove the statement. Now, Baloyi's response to the judge saying he must prove the statement, he says, if needs be, this issue will be argued. Argued, Njani, because the judge has just said, prove the statement. Oh, why are you arguing after the judge has said, prove the statement? Nisi then stands up and says, no, the judge has made a ruling for you to prove the statement. So please prove the statement. Why are you talking about arguments? Arguments for what? The ruling is made. We're not continue from what the ruling has said. And basically, Baloyi says, and basically the judge says, no, but if he wants to argue, he can argue. What is he arguing when he's told 4 times to prove the statement? Then Baloyi basically says, you know what, we'll leave the issue of the statement for now. Let's continue with the cross-examination. So he starts asking several other questions, especially with regards to GWABINI's arrest. And he says, okay, so you say you were arrested at the S section and not the N section. And GWABINI says yes. And he says that we have records of OB books from Primrose as well as Phosphorus, and this is the information that's there. So Mumel is like, I don't have the documents that you're referring to. And the state says, well, we tried to give the defense these documents and no one showed interest in the statements. So Umnisi basically says, no, the reason why we didn't show interest is because when you gave us these statements, we asked you certain questions that you could not answer. So we thought, since you can't answer the questions that we're asking in regards to these particular statements or these particular OB books and entries, then why would you be bringing them up in court? Because we asked you questions, you couldn't answer them, so why are you bringing them up? And basically the judge says, I cannot believe the behavior in this court. You people act like children. And Mnisi also is like, I also can't believe what's happening in this court, because why is the state saying that we were not interested in these documents when we particularly asked certain questions about them? The judge says, I'm the one making remarks when Mnisi, shut up. Shut up. I'm the one making remarks when Mnisi, shut up. Guys, I was fuming. I was in disbelief. I was like, did the judge actually just tell the advocate to shut up? What behavior is this? Judge Rata, like, it's getting too much. Like, he's at the point where he doesn't give two facts about his behavior. He's he's crashing out, guys. He's crashing out. They basically get some time off to make copies of these OB entries, and when they return, Baloyi basically says, you know what? I think that the best option for us to move forward here is for us to ventilate the issue of the statement. Because clearly he has no other questions to ask this witness. He wants to ask the witness questions about the statement. And Mnisi says, but you were told to prove the statement. You have not proved the statement. So how do you want to go into cross-examining this witness without proving the particular statement? He says, no, prove the statement, then you can ask the witness questions on the statement. And Baloyi could not prove. So he basically suggested that everyone brings heads of arguments with regards to the admissibility of the statement. And it looks like they want to do like a trial within a trial, where they'll deal with the admissibility of the statement, and Gininda will need to come back and lie some more to us about how he got the statement, which is crazy business. One, I'm highly concerned about the safety of this particular witness in this case with the delays that are happening. But basically the state says we can't continue without ventilating the issue of the statement. We'll bring heads of arguments, the defense can argue. And Mnisi was not backing down. And I'm so disappointed at Ramusipile and Numalo, because when the judge asked them about what they think about what the state is saying, firstly, Mnisi was like, no, the judge made a ruling. Baloyi needs to prove the statement. You said he must prove it. He must prove it and not tell us about arguments. But Ramusipile stands up and says, well, we need to figure out whether the judge made a ruling or a court order. And I'm just like, Ramsipili, why? Because we literally had Baloyi by the sacks. We had Baloyi by the sacks, and now you're giving the judge a loose end. You're giving the judge leeway. Now the judge says, well, at least you understand the law, basically taking a jab at Umnisi. And Numalo also says he's also prepared to argue. Argue for what? Argue for what? Basically, the decision that was made is that we will adjourn, and that the state will basically bring their arguments, the defense will respond, and we will sit on Tuesday where they will argue about the admissibility of the statement. So these were the proceedings on Thursday. We decided to postpone the case till Tuesday. So Baloyi was meant to submit his arguments today, which is Friday. The defense will respond on Monday, and then on Tuesday we sit and we basically address the issue. Now, one of the issues that came up on Thursday is the issue that GWABINI is not available on Tuesday. He says that he needs to go back to work. And the judge basically says, well, we need you here. And he says, well, that means in Young Pork, because I need to go back to work, And the issue that Umnisi does raise is that GWABINI, at work, they say if you don't come to work, you don't get paid. So already he's been here from Monday to Thursday, which he will not get paid for. And now he needs to stay another 3 days, which is Friday, Monday, going to work probably. And then Tuesday he needs to come back. And the judge basically says that they will write a letter, or they'll send a court order to his employer, to release him from work. But I mean, if they release him, he's not going to get paid, which is the sad reality of the job that he's in. So those were the proceedings for the week, guys. Things are looking really, really great for the defense, in my opinion. They've brought in the right witnesses. The witnesses are corroborating the accused. And it's funny how the witnesses that the defense has brought is not even witnesses that were their own witnesses. They are witnesses of the state that the state didn't use in their case. And it really raises an eyebrow to say, why didn't the state bring these witnesses? Is it because they knew that these witnesses would actually be against the state's case? Ask yourself that question. Anyone that the state didn't bring, which I feel is a key witness, is because the state knew that they were not going to go in line with the narrative that the state has brought before this court. So those are the proceedings for the week. I am hoping and praying to God for GWABINI's safety during this weekend, and hopefully we have him back in court next week so he can complete his cross-examination and re-examination and go back to work peacefully. Those are the proceedings for the week, guys. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.